And welcome back. Andrew Brunson. That's a name you need to know. He's an American Christian pastor, a U.S. citizen, who right now is suffering in a Turkish prison because of his faith. 66 U.S. senators and at least 100 European parliamentarians have written a letter to the Turkish President Erdogan demanding Pastor Brunson's release. But so far, Erdogan, who's been tightening his grip on power and pushing Turkey in an increasingly radical direction, has refused to budge. To get an update on this situation, we sat down in Jerusalem with Michael Karam. Michael is a personal friend of Pastor Brunson who consults with Middle East NGOs and has worked in Turkey for over 25 years. Take a look.
To understand the situation that Andrew is in right now, you really have to go back to the events of July in 2016 and the coup d'etat and the attempted coup in Turkey, thwarted by Erdogan or stopped by Erdogan and the people. After the coup, there was a military crackdown, state of emergency imposed, and basically a big roundup started of all the potential collaborators with the coup. In their eyes, it was the work of Fethullah Gulen and his religious group, the Servants Group, that was behind. Now, Fethullah Gulen is in exile in the United States, as most people know. He was basically accused of masterminding the coup. So it went from first the Fethullah Gulen and his group, and then it went to any kind of Kurdish or opposition groups within the government were then accused of aiding or collaborating in the coup attempt. So Andrew was sort of caught in the middle of that roundup of different people. He himself was picked up in October 2016. In the beginning, the conditions of his imprisonment were different than what they turned out to be. He was moved then to a high security prison shortly after his wife was released, after about a month imprisonment, and then he was moved to a high security prison where he was placed in an overcrowded cell with about 18 different people. The United States government got involved. Vice President Pence, President Trump even brought the subject up on numerous occasions. In fact, from what I've read, every single time he's gotten together, he's met with Turkish officials, whether it's the Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, or even President Erdogan himself, he has brought up Andrew Brunson's case.
You know, we have Pastor Brunson, a wonderful Christian pastor, and he's right now in Turkey. He's been there a long time, and they say he's a spy, but he's not a spy. And we're going to all work, and we've been working for his release. He's having a hard time. There's a trial going on, but the trial is not so much of a trial. And we're talking to the folks in Turkey about doing something about it. But Pastor Brunson, I hope you can hear us. We'll be helping you at some point. We've been working on it for a while. He's been there a long time, and he's a totally innocent man.
President Erdogan actually came out after being confronted or being spoken to by U.S. officials about his situation, saying, look, you have our pastor, meaning Fethullah Gulen, who's in exile in the United States, who's wanted to be deported back to Turkey. We have your pastor. If you want your pastor back, then you're going to have to give us our pastor. So at this point, it became very clear that he was being held as a political hostage. And those charges are serious because they involve a law on the Turkish books, a law on the Turkish government that basically says that dividing the unity of the state is a serious crime that will potentially up to life imprisonment. Right now, his particular charges would involve 35 years in prison. In the court cases that have taken place, and now there's been two, one in mid-April and one in May 7th, Andrew was not even able to bring any kind of witnesses on his behalf into the courtroom. He was only able to answer himself the accusations that were brought against him. And basically one of the main accusations that was brought against him was that his work as a Christian pastor and preaching the gospel was actually illegal, which doesn't make any sense because there's freedom of religion in the Turkish constitution for people to exercise their own faith. So the conditions that you can imagine can be very harsh, especially for a foreigner. You're alone, you're cut off from your family, you're cut off from your friends. You have no communication with the outside world. You're allowed one visit a week by your wife, And he basically has felt like there's a strong possibility that he might not be able to see or be with his family again. He's 50 years old right now. He's been in there 18 months. 35 years is basically a life sentence for him. This now has caught the attention of the nation and other nations around, because Andrew is an evangelical pastor, and the evangelical community worldwide is watching this case. They want to see what's going to happen. This is a man that brought his family, that was committed to serving the Turkish and Kurdish people, who gave his life, who had no political connections at all. He was a pastor. He was there because he loved the nation of Turkey and loved the people of Turkey, and now he's in prison. So we need to pray for him.
Thanks again to Michael Karam for that very important update. Folks, be sure to keep Pastor Andrew Brunson and his family in your prayers. Well, coming up next, you won't see it in the mainstream media, but we will bring it to you here on The Watchman. The story of Israelis banding together to help their Arab Muslim neighbors who've been affected by that brutal Syrian civil war. It's powerful stuff. Stick around.